if we look at the past, you went to... What do you think about the latest developments in Turkey?
Dün bugün yarınla yeniden karşınızdayız sayın seyirciler. Yeni bir bölümle karşınızdayız. Bu bölümümüzde dünyaca ünlü bir mimarı, bir tasarımcıyı ağırlıyoruz. Genç yaşına rağmen kendisi dünyanın sayılı mimarlarına verilen projelerde yer almış bir isim. Meksikalı bir mimar ve tasarımcı konuğumuz. Kendisi unutulmuş veya kalıntı olarak görülen kentsel mekanların yeniden canlandırılmasına odaklanan bir mimar. Kolombiya ve Haber üniversitelerinde ders vermiş bir isim ve bu sene Londra'daki Serpentin pavyonunda tasarlayan en genç mimar Frida Escobedo konuğumuz. Frida Escobedo, welcome to our program, to yesterday, today and tomorrow, and welcome to Turkey, Istanbul.
Thank you so much for having me here.
It is your very first time in Istanbul.
It is.
How did you like it so far?
I'm in love with the city already. I've only been here for one day and I'm in love with the city.
Did you get the chance to go around the city?
Yes, a little bit yesterday.
How do you see the architecture of this city?
It's fascinating and I find many similarities with Mexico City at the same time.
Yes.
So I'm super interested
in terms of?
The layering of history is one thing. And we were just talking yesterday with a friend and I how it's not exactly the same type of architecture, but it has the same feeling, the same warming environment. Like people are very warm and receiving, and also like the public space is very much used, and how it's very active and alive. So I'm enjoying it a lot.
We have the Ottoman. As you know, this city was the capital of Ottoman Empire many years ago, and we still can see the Ottoman architecture around the city.
Yes, no, that's fascinating. Just to see the mosques, and one of the most beautiful moments was in the evening when all the mosques starting to chant, and it was the sunset, the prayer. So it was just a beautiful moment.
Thank you. I get very happy
Yes.
on behalf of my city when an architect like you speaks so highly about it. Thank you very much. So Frida Escobedo, architecture is a mostly male-dominated world. I would like to hear, and I'm sure our viewers will be very much interested in hearing, what was your personal experience in your journey? How did you decide to become an architect?
Well, it was not a very conscious choice, to be honest. When I was very young, you're 17 or around that age when you have to choose a career. And I wasn't sure. I was flirting between the idea of doing something related with art or design or architecture. And then I thought, well, maybe architecture gives you like a stronger basis. You can resolve practical problems, but it has a creative side. And I thought, well, I will try it. My parents were very supportive always, so they said, like, just go for it. And if you feel like it's not your path, then you can change careers, and architecture provides like a very strong basis for almost anything that you do. And I went to the architecture school, and the first week after the first all-nighter, where you have to spend all night working on something, I was very happy. So I was like, okay, if I can do it, if I can like spend all my night doing something that I love, then I know that this is something. Yes. So I was hooked.
The most important thing in life, to do whatever you're doing by love and with love.
Yes.
But I read somewhere you were advised from the school advisor, from your class advisor, that you should become a surgeon?
Yes, I think it had to do with my father being a surgeon too. So I was good at anatomy classes and biology classes, and probably like that type of sensibility with, I was good at aesthetics too. So maybe that combination, I was like precision, and then like being good at those subjects were like why I was advised to be a surgeon.
Which is a great job too.
Yes, but I think architecture has a little bit to do with that, like the interest in, you know, the parts, the components of something and how something works. So I think that I still have in my mind.
You seem to be interested in very simple and industrial, localized materials, but you still manage to give a contemporary, a fresh feeling to the work. In today's very globalized world, how can you still stay true to your roots as a Mexican artist?
While I was doing the Serpentine Pavilion, Hans Ulrich Obrist mentioned that there's this concept of globality, but also this concept of mondialité. And it was really interesting to see how one can be a part of the larger globe, but still very local, because this comes from your experience. This is how you grow up, what you see growing up. It informs you, and of course that shows in your work. But at the same time, we're more connected than ever. Yes,
with
exactly.
the social media, technology.
Yes. So it's a combination. I think what you have inside of you, like what you see when you're growing up, or as you're like just studying and developing your profession, it's always going to be in your work. That is always going to show.
Talking about, because you just mentioned the pavilion, Serpentine Pavilion in the Kensington Gardens in London. Let's talk a little bit about this. In the pavilion, it's in a public place. You have also created an intimate, private space in which we could see the lights getting in and the nature. What did you get inspired from when you first heard that you were commissioned to design the pavilion?
Yes. It was a big challenge because very big names have been associated with the pavilion,
such as Zaha Hadid and
Peter Zumthor and many other wonderful names.
And you were the youngest,
yes.
18th architect to design the pavilion, the youngest one.
Yes, so the pressure was a little bit on.
Yes, I'm sure.
And to me, we were discussing at the office, like how can we do something that not only does not repeat any of the brilliant ideas that have been developed in the past, because we loved many of the pavilions that have been done in the past. We had to study them all to see like what were their strategies and what were the ideas behind them, so we didn't repeat any of those. And then we decided, well, it's not just an opportunity to create something new, but also to talk about what we do in the office and how we do it. We need to express who we are at the same time.
And put your identity on it.
Exactly, yes. So it was a matter of almost, it was like, you know, trying to understand who you are. So it was really, that was really fascinating for me. Like this pavilion provided the opportunity to really review what was important in the ethos of the office. And we said like, okay, we work with simple materials. We know how to create more sophisticated with industrial, like very humble materials, and how we can work with them to provide like a more sophisticated experience. And we also wanted to create an intimate space, something that would contain you, that will hold you, like to make you feel protected and in a very specific environment. And of course that was an image that we had from the Mexican courtyard or the patio, which is like this central space where life happens. Everything happens and there.
Yes.
And this is something that has to do also with the layering of history and past in Mexico, because this is something that we inherited from the Spanish and then from the Arab world. So it's like all this translation and juxtaposition of
and all
stories,
the history
that eventually comes into our everyday life. And the other aspect we wanted to incorporate was the landscape that was surrounding the pavilion. And the way to do it was by using this breeze wall, this almost like open weave wall that would allow the landscape to come in, but in a more filtered way. So we decided to use very industrial, simple material, which was roof tiles, concrete roof tiles.
Yes.
And we just like arranged them in a specific way, so we left some openings. So when you're seeing the wall from the side, it becomes opaque, but when you're seeing it from a frontal view, it becomes almost transparent, and the landscape can come in, the breeze can come in.
And the light comes
and the light
in.
too.
And from some parts you can see the green, the trees, the nature.
That's right.
I've seen it personally. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's a temporary pavilion. Did it go to a collector yet?
I'm not sure yet. I'm sure that once
to become a permanent one.
They always,
Yes.
they always acquire it and they send it somewhere else. I'm not sure where it's going next, which was a very interesting condition, because usually architecture is related to this specific site. Like site and permanence is something that is always embedded within the DNA of architecture. But in the case of this pavilion, it was site-specific, but just for 4 months, and then we didn't know where it was going. So that idea was completely like shifted, and we had to design something that would work in that location
everywhere,
or anywhere else, and that
any
was still
other city in the
exactly
world.
yes.
So you have a feeling where it will be going to?
I have no
Or-
idea yet.
I'm sure you
No.
are very excited deep
Yes.
inside, because
Yes.
probably you will go and see
Yes.
where it will be belonging to
Yes.
in the future.
Yes, I hope so. I hope that it ends in a public space. That's the only thing that I want. I don't mind the geography as long as it's in a public space.
Yes. Talking about permanent works, what would be your permanent dream work to design?
I would love to design a garden.
A garden.
Yes, like maybe it sounds more like landscape, but I think it's another form of architecture. And I think it will be fascinating because it's something that is evolving and changing, and it's alive. So I would love to design a
It
garden.
would be a live garden.
Yes.
Where would be in this one?
I would love it to be for it to be in Mexico. We have lovely weather, and of course we have like all these beautiful lush nature. So yeah, in Mexico.
Like a botanical garden.
Exactly,
maybe.
a botanical garden.
Yes.
Yes.
It would be amazing. We would love to see it in the future then.
Yes.
What is the relevance of working on public places for you? The feeling it creates for you, in you?
That was one of the things that I loved more about practicing architecture, because when you're studying architecture, you don't realize how the relationship with the client is going to be until you're like a professional. And when you have like a particular client, a private client, it's a very straightforward conversation. You know what their desires, their aspirations, everything about them, you know, so you can work with that material and produce something that resonates with him or her. But when you're designing a public space, you have a client, but that is not going to be the user, the final user necessarily. So creating a space that afterwards, when you finish it, is enjoyed by people, is like connecting with someone you don't know. And to me, that's a magical moment, like just to be able to connect with people that you haven't spoken with and they're enjoying something that you did.
And I think this is a little bit more stressful to, you know, design something for the public, for people you don't know whether they're going to like it, whether there's going to be criticism coming back, or they're going to adore it. This is, I'm sure, twice more difficult for you to think about the project.
Yes, and it's a big responsibility, because this is how we shape the city in a way also.
You say architecture is always the ruin of its own idea, and from the moment you draw it, architecture is a projection of what is going to happen in the future. How do you see the architecture's future, looking at it from today's world we're living in?
It's a very interesting question, and it's a question that we always need to be asking ourselves, not just as architects, you know, like as professionals, where we want to go. And one of the things that we've been recently discussing at the office is how architecture leaves two marks on the ground. One is where you build, but also the other mark is where you extract the materials to build that architecture. And I think it has to do with also responsibility, like where are we, like, you know, taking these materials to build a new environment, not just in terms of this construction, but also like the scar that we leave. And I think eventually those materials will not be available anymore. So it's a matter of also understanding what resources we have that are renewable and responsible, and the others that maybe we'll need to find somewhere else and to recycle, and how we create structures that are more flexible so we don't have to keep changing them so much. So they allow things to happen within that space, and it doesn't need to be like very static, you know, like they're more dynamic and they allow for more changes to happen over time. I hope that's where we're going.
Yes, recycling, renewable, the environment now is so much more important. The awareness one should have with the climate change and so on and so on.
Yes.
I know it might be a sensitive topic for you, but I'm curious on your take on art versus architecture. Your work is on the other end of the spectrum. From corporate architecture, your creations don't seem like to be independent objects. In contrast, for example, to Frank Gehry, for example, do you consider the human experience of your work to be an art itself? Did I put it in the right way, the question?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think it has to do more with understanding just space and how we live it. So there are different ways and different degrees how you can become like active in space. So to me, designing an object or designing something that becomes furniture, or designing something that could be perceived more as a sculpture, for example, or designing something that a space that you're contained in, which becomes more like understood as architecture, is part of the same spectrum. It's just like different colors of the same spectrum. It's just about like what happens, how people interact on those spaces or with those objects, but it's always space related. And I think it has to do with how I studied art design in the public domain when I was doing my master's degree. It just expanded the notions of what architecture is. It has like a blurry boundary to me.
There are many design architectural pieces, but not much functioning or vice versa. Classical question, but functionality or designing, design and creativity for you, which one is?
I think it's
prior.
It's both.
Yes,
and some people say like is form following function, and what are the functions? And if architecture has no function, is it still like architecture? And for me, aesthetics, just to have like an aesthetic reason to exist.
Yes.
The pure joy of enjoying something that is beautiful is a function. It's a necessary function, and it's sometimes more related to art, that kind of aesthetic appreciation. But I think it applies to architecture as well.
So both.
Both.
What's your advice to the young generations, to those who want to become architect in the future, to the young creatives, in the field?
Well, I still hope I get much advice, but one of the most valuable advice I've received in my life was to be patient and to stay curious. So I would say that.
To be patient
and to stay curious.
And stay curious, yes. Because learning has no age.
Yes, exactly.
For all of us.
And it's about the experience that you have. So you have to keep your eyes open and your feet on the ground and be patient, because architecture is like a long, long, long career.
And long journey.
It's a long journey, yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, Frida Escobedo, for your time, for participating into our program, and come back, please, to Turkey.
I would love to. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dün bugün yarının sonuna geldik sayın seyirciler. Harika bir söyleşi yaptık Frida Escobedo ile. Kendisi bize mimaride çocukluktan itibaren mimariye olan ilgisini, nasıl bu işe başladığını, gönül verdiğini ve tecrübelerini aktardı. Umarım sizlerin de bu keyifli sohbet hoşunuza gitmiştir. Sonuna geldik programımızın. Bir başka Dün Bugün Yarın'da yeniden karşınızda olmak üzere. Şimdilik hoşça kalın.